It's our mission, for those of you who do not know us, it is our mission to foster a community of like-minded individuals, inspire success and empower action. So we really want people to take away as much as they can from our sessions and implement what they learn into their own lives and build positive results. So you can find us at CWHO.ca. We specialize in real estate investment education. We have podcasts, videos, calculators, documents that you can use for deals. We also run some courses and some programs, which we'll talk about in a second here. So this is our 2021 associate program that is underway right now. The picture that you can see on screen was the program that we ran last year, which Amanda, who you can see on screen there, was a part of. That was the property we purchased down in Lethbridge, Alberta, as a group, as a team. So this program is really designed to help people learn how to do joint venture real estate by actually doing joint venture real estate. It's almost forced learning, if you will. So the program for 2021 is currently closed. We're halfway through. Our team this year is actually going to be presenting to the group in the start of August. And we're excited to see what investment opportunities they bring to the table. And we can't wait to buy another property with the group. We also have a special guest joining us all the way from sunny Vancouver. Dustin Hogan is a men's mental wellness counsellor. Dustin, welcome, buddy. Thanks very much for taking the time out of this hot Tuesday evening to, what's the temperature where you are? Are we on the same keel here?
Let me just check right now. It's only 29 right now, so it's very cold compared to yesterday. Yesterday was 41, and about 2 hours from here up in Lytton, BC, it was 49.5 today, new Canadian records. So,
oh my God.
Yeah,
that's pretty warm. That is for sure. Awesome, man. Well, thanks again. So why don't we pass it over to you? You can give us a bit of an introduction. Let us know
Sure.
what you're up to. I think you have remote control as of now.
Should be. Yeah, good to go. So thank you guys. Thank you for inviting me out here tonight. Really looking forward to talking about this topic because I think it is just so valuable, so important, especially now as we're coming out, the back end of a year and a half of the craziest time, I think, for all of us. And mental health, thankfully, is becoming more of a conversation. And really, that's what tonight is all about, specifically as it applies to us entrepreneurs, right? Some of us are maybe got a side hustle, maybe entrepreneurship or running your business is your full-time gig, but wherever you fit on that spectrum, you're going to find tonight, as I'm discussing some of the things that we're going to talk about, is as entrepreneurs, as solopreneurs, as investors, mental health is so critical and we're actually being affected significantly by it. So what am I going to talk about tonight? I figured I'd start with my entrepreneurial journey and how it's affected my mental health. I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about tonight. And of course, I want to talk about some of the statistics and tactics and strategies that we can all incorporate. But I figured what better way to talk about the impact that entrepreneurship has on mental health than talking about my story, because I've been affected over the years with both anxiety and depression. And, it's been quite the journey. So we'll talk a bit about that. And then I'm also going to talk about, understanding mental health, especially as an entrepreneur. So talking about, some of the definitions, the stats, the causes, the signs, and trigger warnings. So to be mindful of these pieces of information, especially as it relates to all of us in this room. Then we're going to talk about this idea of hustle culture. Phil mentioned hustle in his presentation there. And I think, for entrepreneurs, this idea of hustling is often worn as a badge of honor. And by no means am I here tonight to say to not hustle, because that's certainly part of the role. But there certainly comes a limit when I think we can cross the threshold of too much hustling. And fortunately and unfortunately, the world of social media has so many benefits, yet there's a lot of drawbacks. And a lot of the times we're seeing hustle is perpetuated on social media. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then we're also going to talk about building your mental health toolbox. And I figured for a group of real estate investors, the analogy of building a toolbox or creating a toolbox fit beautifully. So we're going to talk about, some of the tools that you can put in your toolbox to not only improve your mental health, but ultimately to improve the success of your business. And we're going to talk a lot about this idea of self-care. I had the pleasure of chatting with Brad and Phil last week, and we talked in depth about self-care. And Brad, I'm going to put you on blast tonight as much as I can to make sure that you're focusing in on self-care. So we're going to talk about why it's important, some of the ideas to really build a self-care plan, and really the importance of self-care as entrepreneurs. And then we're going to finish off with what I like to call the 5 pillars of entrepreneurial mental health. This is going to summarize kind of everything that we've discussed. And then I'm also going to share some resources, just some simple resources, some websites, a phone number that you can call if you find yourself struggling with mental health, really just to have these as part of your playbook and really to be able to reach for those. And we'll have a little bit of fun as well. Tonight can be obviously a very deep topic. It can be a heavy topic at times, but I'm going to do my best just to bring some lightness to it. Some fun and really just, share from a place of passion, because I'm so passionate about mental health and personal development. So let's start with my entrepreneurial journey and my mental health. So when I got into entrepreneurship, 15 or so years ago, I thought that this was going to be the path. I thought it was going to be this beautiful linear line that just starts and I'm kind of going up, finding success. I knew that there was going to be challenges, that there was going to be struggles, but I figured, hey, I'm a smart guy, I'm an intelligent guy, so this entrepreneurship thing should be no problem. But I'm sure, as many of you have found out when I got into it, this is kind of what entrepreneurship ends up looking like. And oftentimes, this is what the day looks like. We start, we go this way, we go that way, we don't know what the heck is going on. And really, this is sometimes the blessing and the curse of entrepreneurship, but there's just so much beauty and value in it, because truly this is how we kind of like learn through our mistakes, through our challenges, through our setbacks. I often say that our biggest challenges are truly our biggest opportunities. And as we would agree, there are many challenges within entrepreneurship. So where did I get started as far as entrepreneurship goes? So 15, 16 years ago, there's me rocking my more tan skin that I have now. My first business was a landscaping business in Calgary, which is where I'm from. Currently living in New Westminster right now. So 15 years ago, a couple neighbors started asking me to cut their grass. 1 turned into 2, turned into 5 turned into 10. And before you know it, I was servicing about 100 yards in Southwest Calgary every single week. And it was a lot of fun. And you can see some of my work there on the right-hand side. It was one of the only residential landscaping companies that was doing striping on yards. So that was kind of my, claim to fame. And my business at the time was called The Grass Guy. An interesting name before marijuana was legalized. I'll just say that. I ended up getting quite a few calls based on the number that was on the back of my work truck, people looking for different services other than lawn maintenance. But this was a business that, I kind of built from the ground up, ran it for about 6 years. But ultimately, towards the end of it, I recognized that I was just doing this business just to make money. And there's nothing wrong with making money. But I woke up one day, actually, I was on my way to a job one day, and I had to pull over because I was overcome with just so much emotion. I was actually crying because I recognized I was just doing this business to make money. There was no passion involved in it. And it was this moment where I realized that if I didn't kind of make a decision and really want to pursue something that I was passionate about, would I look back in 10 or 20 years and say I should have got out of this business? So I made a pretty huge decision to get out of this business. And this was kind of the first, indication of how mental health is impacted by entrepreneurship. So I'll talk a bit about that in a minute here. So right around the time that I had this business, I also thought it would be a good idea to start getting into real estate investing. But being, a young 22, 23-year-old, I didn't think that I needed to hire people like Brad or Phil to show me what to do. I figured I was just going to figure it all out on my own. So, a couple friends and I, we bought a number of properties. This is us renovating a suite downtown Calgary. Had no idea how to renovate a thing. I knew how to swing a hammer, but that was about it. And this was my first jump into kind of investing. And, 6 months later, we built this nice little 1-bedroom condo, a little outdated now compared to the beautiful home that Phil showed us earlier. But the fact that I built this with my own 2 hands just blew me away, because I hadn't built anything up until that point. But unfortunately, in my naive state as a 23, 24-year-old, I figured that the best time to get into real estate investing was 2007 and 2008. Clearly a terrible time to get into investing, because what ended up happening is myself and my business partners, we had 5 properties that we're holding at that time. Because I did not know what I was doing, we figured we needed to just get out of everything. And unfortunately, in about a year and a half, personally, I lost about $100,000. And at 24, 25 years old, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money now. And the impact that quote unquote failure had on my self-esteem, my sense of accomplishment, my ability to feel like I could successfully do anything, it absolutely plummeted. It absolutely plummeted. And I remember at that time, I was having to carry the mortgage for 3 different properties, paying about 5 G's a month in mortgages, but that was about all that I was bringing in at the time. And even though I had my own townhouse in Richmond Hill, I couldn't afford to put food in the fridge, so I had to go to my parents' house every night for dinner. And it was a real rude awakening of, even though we've got a goal, we've got a vision, we've got to be smart about it. And that's why I'm so happy that everybody's here tonight and learning from experts like Amanda and Brad and Phil, just really how to do these things right. So after this catastrophic failure, I really started to reevaluate what I wanted to do from a career standpoint and a business standpoint. And around this time, when I was investing and also running the landscaping business, like I said, I wasn't passionate about it, but what I was passionate about was DJing and music production. That's what I was doing. I was cutting grass in the day, doing the real estate stuff, on the weekends in the day. And then at nights, I was rocking the club. And this was something that I was so passionate about. So for those of you that are in Calgary, this is actually down at the Palace or Flame Central down on 8th Avenue there. And for me, this opportunity to get to rock the stage in front of like 1,500, 2,000 people, man, oh man, was it exhilarating. And it was diving into this new entrepreneurial venture of music and DJing that really, that's the reason that I moved here to Vancouver. So 10 years ago, decided to, sell the business, sell my home there in Richmond Hill, and move out here to Vancouver to pursue music, to pursue DJing, and to really to pivot, I guess you could say, do a life pivot in addition to a business pivot. And I came out here to music school. I'd kind of reset my life. I'd had this business that was somewhat successful, but I wasn't passionate about it. Obviously, things didn't work out in real estate. And here I was now kind of resetting my life for this new vision. And man, it was one of the best decisions that I've ever made. Because when I moved out here, I actually got the opportunity to start teaching at a high school in Vancouver. So there's a photo of me and some of my grade 10 students. So I'm in the middle. Everyone else is throwing up their gangster poses and stuff like that. And I got the opportunity to teach music, to teach DJing at a school here in Vancouver that actually catered to students that struggled with anxiety, that students that struggled with other mental health challenges, and students that really couldn't find their way in the traditional high school stream. And I was so passionate about getting the chance to work with these kids, and they inspired me every single day. And not only was I teaching them music and DJing, but ultimately what was happening is it was really life skills training. And that's what drew me to this. And this was actually my first step into coaching, so to speak, which is kind of what I'm doing now. And I'll get to that in a moment. But when working at this school, I recognized, hey, I love this teaching thing. I love this coaching thing. Hey, I'm an entrepreneur at heart. Why don't I decide to start a seminar business, right? Everybody decides to just do that overnight. And so that's what I did. I just decided back in 2016, my next business pivot was to start a seminar business called the Rockstar Academy, doing seminars and workshops, all in personal development, goal setting. and for a number of years hosted events here in Vancouver. So this is one of my events, and it was incredible getting the chance to fill rooms and get the chance to work with mostly entrepreneurs actually who really wanted to clarify their vision. So I ran this business from 2016 till about 2018, had some initial success, came out the gates doing really well, sold out my first few events, ended up getting some group coaching clients, but then ultimately the business fizzled out and I came to another major crossroads in 2018. And it was quite devastating actually, because I'd put so much blood, sweat, and tears into trying to get these these events up and running. And when I wasn't able to, it almost like re-triggered the experience that I had 5 or 6 years prior to that with the real estate investments not working out. And once again, I'm questioning my sense of self-worth, feeling like an absolute failure, feeling like I've let down my family, my wife, my friends, all of these people who've invested in me. And it was really at this point that my mental health started to spiral. And I wasn't even aware of it at the time. I can only recognize it looking back. So like, any entrepreneur, I said, okay, this isn't working. What can I do? I've got to pivot. So what I did is I said, okay, I want to take my speaking skills and maybe I can speak on behalf of other organizations. So for about a 2-month period, I cold called about 80 organizations throughout North America that I thought potentially would be looking for speakers. Ended up actually hooking up with an organization here in Vancouver, a company called Safer Schools Together. And then on the left-hand side there, you can see me speaking to a group of students. So from 2018 till pretty much the end of 2019, I traveled throughout Western Canada speaking to students, teachers and parents, mental health professionals, and law enforcement, all about social media and the impact that it has on our lives. And over that 1.5 year period, I was blessed to be able to deliver like close to 300 presentations to about 35,000 students. And it was incredible, yet at the same time, it really impacted my mental health. I did get to do some cool things. You can see me on the right there. That's actually getting interviewed on CTV about bullying and social media. But even though I'm all smiles on the outside, internally, things were really starting to crumble because I'm on the road. Some weeks I was doing between 20 and 25 presentations, traveling throughout quite a bit throughout Alberta, actually, small town like Drayton Valley and Leduc. But it was so overwhelming, just the sheer volume that I was doing. A lot of the times going into these schools would be challenging because there'd be a bullying incident on social media that would potentially lead to, there was suicides going on. And for me, as someone that was dealing with intense mental health challenges with anxiety and depression at the time, it just became this cascading domino effect. And then unfortunately, in 2019, that's when things really hit rock bottom. And I remember I was away in Regina, actually. I was there attending presentations. I wasn't giving them. And I remember that night I was, in the hotel room, tears are like flowing down my face. Anxiety is just like coursing through my body. I was at such a low state from a depression standpoint that it almost felt like sadness was just like seeping out of my skin. And I remember looking at myself in the mirror and just saying, man, this is absolute torture. I don't know how I'm going to get through this, let alone make it through the next 40 or 50 years of my life. And it was at that point where I really recognized the low state that I was in and what I needed to do to really work to heal myself. And this image is so powerful to me because for so long, this was me, smiling, confident, charismatic on the outside, but internally going through so many struggles. And quite frankly, from an entrepreneurship standpoint, many of us may be feeling like this, feeling like we've got to put that mask on and have a good face, a strong face, putting it on for the rest of the world. So I made the decision that I was going to prioritize my mental health. I was really going to make some major shifts, stepped away from that speaking work in 2019 to prioritize my healing, to work with coaches and counselors, and really to just take the ultimate self-care break. And it was in this space to just have some time to really think and to ground myself. That's when I made the decision that I wanted to then go back to school. I wanted to further my education in counseling because I wanted to help other people that have gone through similar or the same challenges that I have. So for these last 2 years, I've been going through school, a counselor, building up my private practice, and absolutely honored to be able to do this type of work right now. And I'm not here to say that every day is sunshine and rainbows. Many days are still a struggle, right? Many days it is still a struggle to get going, to get out of bed, to just get motivated. Yet I now have a powerful toolbox that I can be able to reach to in those moments of challenge. And now that's really what I share with my clients. And that's what I'm excited to share with all of you here tonight. So we're going to be covering a lot of information. At times, it may feel like drinking from a fire hose, and that's okay. You can reach out to me at any time, and I'll certainly please, if you have questions as we're moving along, we'll try and get you out of here, before midnight tonight. So we'll jump right into it right now. And I figured we would just start at the beginning. It's like, well, what the heck is mental health? Because this is a word that's thrown around a lot, and it's got a lot of different meanings and a lot of different perspectives. So ultimately, when we're talking about mental health, we're referring to our cognitive, our behavioral, and our emotional state. So it really just comes down to the way that you think, the way that you feel, and the way that you behave, the actions that you take. And the World Health Organization, right, when they define mental health, they say it's a state of well-being in which an individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. And there's a reason that I bolded can cope with normal stresses of life, because to me, that's really what mental health is. If you can be able to cope with the challenges that you face, to me, this is really what mental health comes down to. And also, mental health is more than just the absence of mental health disorders and illnesses. And quite frankly, that's a lot of the stigma that we're facing these days. When people use the word mental health, quite often they're maybe mistaking it because they're referring to somebody that has serious mental illness or mental health disorder, something like schizophrenia, bipolar, anxiety, depression, these types of things. So it's certainly a part of it. So really, I feel like part of my work and part of our work here tonight, having this conversation, is breaking down some of that stigma, making it normalizing. To having these conversations is really how we do those things. And yeah, just a second, what Phil put in the chat there, this is definitely a safe space. So please, whatever you want to speak about, definitely a safe space to share what you'd like. So shifting gears a little bit, talking about something that's slightly different, but kind of the same, mental wellness. What does that mean? That's what I've branded myself as, a men's mental wellness counselor. But what the heck do we mean by mental wellness? Well, think of it like this. Wellness is the active pursuit of the activities, the choices, and the lifestyles that are going to lead to a state of mental health. So if you think about it like this, mental health is the goal, and wellness is the vehicle to get there. And even if we were to think about that from like a real estate perspective, or just like a financial freedom perspective, if your goal is financial freedom or time freedom, one of the vehicles to get there is real estate. There's obviously other vehicles to get there as well. And it's the same thing with mental health. If that's the goal, there's many different things you can do from a wellness perspective to get there. And we're going to talk about some of those ideas here tonight. So like I said, I wanted to share some hard statistics, because over the last few years, just on my own journey, anecdotally, I've recognized, man, there's got to be something in the water of entrepreneurship, because a lot of entrepreneurs that I know are dealing with challenges with mental health. And thankfully, there's a lot of research that's actually coming out there and now talking about this. And there was a very powerful study back in 2015 at UC San Francisco and Berkeley, which was just specifically on this idea of how entrepreneurs are affected from a mental health standpoint. So in this study, they found that 72% of entrepreneurs are affected by mental health conditions, compared to just 48% of non-entrepreneurs. So that is quite a big gap, about 24% there. Entrepreneurs are 2 times more likely to have depression, to deal with depression compared to the general population. Entrepreneurs are 6 times more likely to have ADHD. And I see Phil smiling at that. And I certainly smiled when I read this stat too, because does anybody in this room have shiny object syndrome? Yes, that seems like a good idea. That seems like oh, squirrel, right? So it's no surprise to me that as entrepreneurs, we're more likely to suffer from ADHD. And it can go both ways. There's 2 sides to every coin here. Here's another, alarming one is entrepreneurs 3 times more likely to face substance abuse issues. Think about the stress, think about the overwhelming intensity and the risk that we take on. Entrepreneurs are 10 times more likely to have bipolar. For those of you that aren't familiar with bipolar, it used to be referred to as manic depression, manic depressive. So basically going through states of depressive episodes and then mania where you're kind of filled with energy and very scattered. So this is shocking that as entrepreneurs, 10 times more likely to deal with that. Twice as likely to have psychiatric hospitalization and 2 times more likely to deal with suicidal thoughts. And unfortunately, this is becoming kind of an epidemic within the entrepreneur community, especially when it comes to like major financial losses. I've read a lot of very, very sad stories, and there's been many publicized stories of like highly successful entrepreneurs taking their own life. So very, very sad statistic. So there was another study that I wanted to refer to because it's Canadian based. Based in Canada. So a couple of years ago, CMHA, the Canadian Mental Health Association, in conjunction with the BDC, the Business Development Bank of Canada, did a report all about entrepreneurs, all about mental health. The report's called Going It Alone, I believe. You can download it. It's like a 43-page report. And in this report, they found that 62% of us felt depressed at least once a week. 46% of entrepreneurs experienced low mood and or felt mentally tired at least once a week. 46% of entrepreneurs surveyed also reported that their mental health problems interfered with their ability to work. So this is something for us to be mindful of, right? Is our mental state, our emotional state is really going to set us up for success, or it may hinder us from taking action. It may hinder us from moving in the direction that we want to move. And this was another interesting one, is that entrepreneurs who are female or those that are in early stages and those with fewer employees, think like solopreneurs, a lower revenue, are more likely to report mental health issues. So something else to be mindful of, especially if you're just starting your journey, you're just at the starting gate, so to speak. But of all of these statistics, 78% reported not wanting the support of a mental health professional. Oh yeah, thanks for the question. Let me just read it here. So yeah, shiny object syndrome. So it's kind of a made up term, but I was referring to that when I was talking about ADHD, because as entrepreneurs, we have a lot of ideas. We want to try a lot of different things. So everything seems like a shiny object at times that we want to potentially invest in or get involved in. Hence why entrepreneurs, as it mentioned, are about 6 times more likely to suffer from ADHD compared to the general population. So hopefully that helps. And certainly if you've got somebody that's seeking counseling, I'll certainly mention that a little bit later on of some of the ways that I might be able to help with that. But yeah, great question. Thank you for that. All right, so no problem. I have a bit of a question and I'm looking for some interaction here. And there's nothing worse as a presenter than looking at the screen and seeing a wax museum staring back at you. So I would love some ideas, some insights, even just throw it in the chat. Is why do you guys think that entrepreneurs are struggling more than others when it comes to mental health? Feel free to just unmute yourself or throw it in the chat, send me a smoke signal, whatever you've got to do. And if not, I will definitely abuse Brad and Phil to help us out here.
Well, I could maybe kick it off. I mean, while people have a think about the question, I mean, just, you know, as somebody who has gone through the, I don't know, we'll call it jumping off the deep end, you know, going from that salary job, the 9 to 5, the stable income, two full-time, just say self-employed, entrepreneurship, whatever you want to call it. At the end of the day, the buck stops here. So, you go from an environment where you're constantly surrounded by colleagues at work, and from when the moment you get there, you're having a conversation. How was your night? What have you got going on today? And then the flip side, the moment that you become an entrepreneur, that changes, that completely changes. And all of a sudden not only are you left to your own devices, so to speak, because there's no managerial or executive level there to say, or boss to say, this is what I need you to do, and this is when I need it done by. But you're also in an environment where you're by yourself so much of the time. So not only do you have to self-govern and be disciplined, but you also just don't have that general conversation that maybe, I don't know, we as humans, maybe we need it more than we think. I don't know. I mean, that's something that I think is relative to why we tend to struggle a little bit more as entrepreneurs.
Beautifully said. Yeah. And Phil, we'll jump to you in a second there, but some great ones in the chat. Amanda, feeling like they're not where they want to be in life when they hit a certain age. Definitely comparison trap to others, right? On social media. Like to me, that is one of the biggest black holes of social media, is the comparison trap. And I am guilty as charged of that. And then Yuki, yeah, shiny objects, courses we see online. I'm guilty as charged as West. This mastermind, that course, this book, right? And then George, yeah, great comment, man. Thank you. So extreme self-reliance, definitely. And similar to kind of what Brad said there, it's like you're running the show, right? So yeah, Phil, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, I think a big part of it too is like a lot of social isolation is a big part of it too, just because you are, very much, when you're an entrepreneur, you're very much running, you're on your own journey. And you can't really share that with a lot of people, which is why it's sometimes why a lot of entrepreneurs, I think, try to get another partner in. Thanks, Brad, to run the business together, just because you can have someone to bounce ideas off and you don't feel as isolated. But when you're by yourself, like just on another note about like just extreme pressure, but it's to highlight this isolation bit, is I also have a day job as well that I'm still doing full time. And I was setting up my basement, and I think Dustin, I told you the story, but I was setting up my treadmill, and I was figuring out how to create a little treadmill desk so I can work on my treadmill while I go for a walk, right? Just to fit more stuff into my already busy day. And then I was at work, and I was telling some people, it's like, hey, I think I figured out how to build the treadmill desk using my treadmill. And the first question that didn't even cross my mind that someone asked me is, why are you working at home? I was like, oh, yeah, okay. So, okay, yeah, you guys don't get it, but it's okay. Then I just kind of laughed at it. But yeah, there's a lot of isolation. I think that takes a toll after a while.
Yeah. So beautifully said. Thanks. And thanks for that, Phil. And I remember when we talked about that, is like, yeah, people just don't get it. It's hard to have conversations about your duties as an entrepreneur with people who aren't entrepreneurs, have no desire to be entrepreneurs, have never even considered it. It's like speaking a different language. And the unfortunate thing, the challenging thing, is if those people that you're sharing the journey with are those closest to you, like friends, family, that's when it can really hurt and can create that sense of loneliness and that isolation piece that you're talking about. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. And you guys definitely hit the head on some that I've got on the line here. So first and foremost, one of the ones is we don't prioritize our physical and mental health. So it's like, go, go, go. We'll eat crap food, or we won't eat at all. We won't have downtime. It's not necessarily a priority, but I'm hoping that after tonight, even if it's 1% more of a priority for everybody here, then I've done my job. Ultimately, we take more risks. We take on more risks than non-entrepreneurs. And this has a lot of upside, but it can have a lot of downside as well. And I found that out certainly the hard way, with the real estate back in 2017 or 2007, 2008. Sure, had the world not collapsed, I probably would be singing a different tune today. But at the time, that risk was everything that I had. And unfortunately, it, turned out the way it did. Probably wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. So it all happened for a reason, but at the time it didn't feel that way. The financial uncertainty, right? We just don't know what's coming from a financial standpoint. The lonely path, social isolation. Phil, you stole that right from my slide, man. So it is very much a lonely path. And I'm glad that you brought up the piece about finding a partner. And even if it's maybe not a partner in your business, it's just who's that team that you have around you, and can you connect with them on more of a regular basis to build that social connection, because it's so important. And there's so many studies out there now showing that loneliness is a major cause of a lot of mental health challenges, especially for entrepreneurs. The stigma around mental health and entrepreneurship. We're expected to be that person that has it all together. So if we're sharing the struggles that we're going through, there's this stigma that there's something wrong with that. But I'm really hoping that we can slowly crack away at that, because truly in my mind, being vulnerable and being authentic is not a weakness. It is a strength, because it takes a hell of a lot of courage to share your truth with those around you. This idea of impression management, it's an interesting term that I found in my research. So, that it's our job as entrepreneurs to influence the perception that people have of us on social media, in person. And if we're struggling internally, this takes a lot of effort to do. And it also results in us feeling like a fraud at times. And these feelings compounded over time really can affect us from a mental health standpoint. And one of the major reasons that as entrepreneurs specifically, we struggle more than the general population. Another thing, right? When we leave, if you were in that 9-to-5 path and you had those fancy benefits and you could get a massage, you could go to counseling, you could get your medication paid for if need be, as entrepreneurs, we certainly don't have that to the level that others do that do have those benefits. So that is a very big contributing factor to entrepreneurs struggling with mental health. And then the final one that I actually wanted to bring up, it's kind of a two-sided coin, because a lot of the traits that actually make for good entrepreneurs predispose us to mental health issues. And that study that I referenced out of UC San Francisco and Berkeley actually talks about this. So our creativity, while it can serve us as entrepreneurs, the creativity and ruminating on negative thinking can contribute to things like anxiety, can contribute to things like depression. So it's a double-sided coin here. So this list could go on for days, but we've only got so much time here. So thanks for everybody for your contribution. So I wanted to just give a bit of an overview, like, well, what is anxiety? Because it's a term that gets thrown around a lot these days, but what does it actually mean? So it's actually a normal emotion. It's our brain's way of reacting to stress and alerting you of potential danger. So anxiety is not bad. It was actually built in biologically to protect us. It's our body's natural response to stress. So it's maybe that feeling of fear or apprehension about what's to come. But here's the deal. It's there to protect us, but sometimes it's sending us the wrong messages at the wrong time. And this is where anxiety becomes a problem, because a little bit of an anxiety, a little bit of stress, that's actually going to keep you alive. And if you think back, thousands of years ago, when we were literally getting chased by saber-toothed tigers, if we weren't anxious, if we didn't have fear, well, we probably wouldn't last very long. So this fight or flight feeling, which it's often referred to, is actually a good thing. It's there to keep us alive. However, I don't know about any of you, but I don't see any like saber-toothed tigers walking down the street, or I haven't been chased by a bear in a very long time, if not ever. So this exaggerated anxiety response that many of us deal with on a regular basis is showing up at the incorrect times. But what's happened now is it's become not that saber-toothed tiger that's triggering it. It's that deal that might be falling through. It's that comparison trap that you find yourself on social media of like, well, this person's doing that and I should be doing that. And that feeling of anxiousness or overwhelm that comes up in your body. It's that stress that maybe you feel if, you know, your spouse or partner or friend is going through something challenging. So we're not dealing with the same kind of stressors, but we're having that same biological response. So it's just important to remind yourself of that some stress, some anxiety is okay, but when it becomes too much and you start having symptoms, such as these on this symptoms list here for generalized anxiety, that's when it starts to become a problem. And it becomes a problem when they extend over about a 6-month period. So feeling like restless, overly fatigued, excessive anxiety and worry, you know, increased muscle aches and soreness, impaired concentration, irritable, difficulty sleeping. Like I said, in the short term, these are signs of stress, and that's okay. But if it extends over a month, 2 months, 6 months, that's when, you know, my suggestion would be to speak to somebody about it, because you could be dealing with an anxiety disorder. And the reason that I talked about anxiety, and I'll talk about depression here in a second, and those are kind of like the big two when it comes to mental health challenges, specifically as entrepreneurs. So on that note, talking about depression, as I mentioned earlier, entrepreneurs are twice as likely to experience depression compared to the general population. And the unfortunate thing when it comes to stigma around depression, oftentimes people that have never experienced it or don't know anybody that's experienced it just think it's this. It's either you're being lazy or you're feeling sad. And I can't tell you how painful it is for somebody that's dealing with depression to have somebody say, oh man, like you've got so much to feel happy for. There's no reason to feel sad, because depression is so much more than sadness. Sadness is certainly a part of it, but it is not the whole picture. This kind of paints the whole picture. So these are certainly some of the symptoms when it comes to depression. So someone that may be experiencing, 5 or more of these symptoms over, over and above a 2-week period, that's when it could be considered, a sign of something more serious. So like I said, feeling sad is part of it, but it's a deep sadness, guilty, helpless. Digestive problems, that's a huge issue when it comes to depression. Restlessness, this reduced sense of self-worth, even physical pains. Depression often manifests physically, and that's one of the shocking parts of it, is you can actually feel that sadness in your body at such a deep level. Pessimism, loss of interest in activities, that's a big one. If all of a sudden you find yourself not as interested in things that you were interested in a few weeks ago or a few months ago, might be a warning sign to take a look at things. Changes in weight, appetite, irritability, like I said, insomnia or excessive sleeping, trouble focusing, making decisions, and suicidal thoughts or attempts. So as a therapist, as a counselor, it's not in my scope of practice to diagnose these things. If you've got some concerns, my suggestion, we'll talk about it a little bit later, is speak to your doctor. And work with them. That's what they're trained to do, and that's certainly where they can help you. So dealing with anxiety and depression as an entrepreneur here. So like I said, to be diagnosed with either of these, it must persist. For depression, those symptoms must persist over about a 2-week period. For anxiety, it's over about a 6-month period. But there are a lot of effective treatments for both. And we're going to talk in depth about self-care in a moment here, but I just wanted to share some of the other ideas as far as treatment goes. So diet and exercise. There is so much incredible research out there, my friends, on using diet and exercise as treatments for both anxiety and depression. And what blew me away is exercise in and of itself actually is shown, research has shown that it can improve mood and it can improve depression symptoms at an equal level, if not a greater level, than most of the antidepressants that are on the market. And antidepressants are the most overly prescribed medication. I certainly have no problems with those. They've worked wonders for me over the years at certain times of my life when I've needed them. But diet and exercise are showing incredible results as far as improving mood. Medication, like I said, this is something to speak to your doctor with, can certainly be a part of a treatment plan of some sort. Self-care, self-care, self-care. Start small and build that into your routine. And we're going to go into that in depth here in a moment. But even start small. I'm going to follow up with Brad next week and make sure he's integrating at least 5 minutes of self-care into his day, because 5 minutes is better than 0 minutes, and 1 minute is better than zero. So just starting small and building that into your routine. There are other alternative therapies and treatments out there. Obviously talk therapy is important, which we'll talk about here in a moment, but things like something called EFT, which stands for emotional freedom technique, which is about, tapping on certain meridian points on your body. Even things like, now that cannabis has been legalized, that's been used in treatment. There's talks of other alternative therapies with things like, ketamine, which was for the longest time an illegal substance. And now you can actually get ketamine IV treatment. So things like that are being studied at the UBC throughout Canada. It's fascinating to see the work that's going on. And then of course, talk therapy. There's so many affordable options out there. Online talk therapy, chat talk therapy is another thing as well. And I wanted to share this photo here because to me, this sums up the beauty of working with somebody, a counselor or a therapist, right? Being, oftentimes we're just this raveled in this tangled mess in our minds, and the therapist is not there to fix your problems or to tell you what to do, is really just there to help you unravel it. So such a powerful piece. So we're doing well. We're just going to talk about a couple more topics here. One very important topic, this hustle culture that we live in, right? Hustle, 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 repeat. And by no means am I saying for us not to hustle, but just being mindful of it. Because really, what does it mean for us to hustle, right? It's this social standard where one can only succeed if they overexert and work themselves to max capacity. And like I said earlier, this beautiful world of social media, it's got two sides to the coin. It really perpetuates this idea of hustling. And like I said, I'm not here to say not to hustle, but just to be mindful of it, because it is, this idea of 24/7 hustling is a badge of honor. Really, that is actually contributing to our burnout, contributing to major struggles with mental health. And even the World Health Organization, they had something to say about hustle as well. Working long hours elevates the risk of poor mental health, such as depressive symptoms, worsened emotional well-being, anxiety, and even suicidal thoughts. And I say that, hustling can actually work against us, both physically and mentally. So oftentimes when we're in hustle mode, we're thinking that we're going to be more creative and more productive, but eventually we have diminishing returns and it starts actually working against us. We're lacking clarity to make decisions. We're making mistakes. We're not going over things the way that we typically would if we were, top notch, both physically and mentally. So there comes a point when hustling can actually work against us. And my suggestion is, if you need to hustle, just do it in short bursts. Think of it as like a turbocharger that you're going to use in short bursts, and then you're going to recharge that battery. And speaking of recharging your battery, let's shift gears and let's talk about building your mental health toolbox. What are you going to put in your mental health toolbox, and how is that going to move you forward? Well, the first thing that I suggest that we cultivate, we build, is this idea of grit. And many of you have potentially heard of grit before. Angela Duckworth, an incredible researcher on this idea of grit. And what the heck is grit? If you've never heard of it, think of it like this. It is passion. It is perseverance towards those long-term goals that you have, right? If we're persevering, that means we're sticking with it. We're continuing to work hard, even after experiencing difficulty or failure. And why is it important? Well, being naturally smart and talented are great, but to truly do well and to truly thrive, we need to be able to persevere, right? When that deal doesn't go through, we've got to be able to persevere through that moment. And here's the deal. When it comes to grit, this is a characteristic that I've developed over the years. And truly, grit has allowed me to get through some of the darkest times from a mental health standpoint, just to be able to persevere in those moments, to not push myself too hard. So don't confuse grit and hustle. Grit is just the willingness to persevere, where hustle is just like nonstop forward motion, where grit is about persevering. So how do you cultivate more of it? couple little strategies, couple little of ideas is have a strong vision, get clear on your reason why. Why are you doing what you're doing? Because if you can connect with that reason why, you're going to be able to persevere at a greater level in those moments when you need to move forward. Seek support. What do I mean by that? Having that team around you to cheer you on, to support you in those moments when things get tough and you do need to cultivate or to engage some grit. And practice delayed gratification. There's a funny little study that came out back in 1972 called the marshmallow experiment. If you haven't seen it, look it up on YouTube. It's quite fascinating. So essentially what they did is they took a group of kids. Researchers, created this experiment where they put kids in this room individually, and in front of them they put one piece of candy, typically a marshmallow, hence called the marshmallow experiment. And the researcher turned to the little kid and said, hey, I'm going to leave you here with this marshmallow, and I'm going to come back. And if when I come back, you haven't eaten this marshmallow, I'm going to give you 2. But they didn't tell the kid when they were going to come back. And of course, they were filming it because this was an experiment. And sure enough, when that researcher leaves the room, the kids are like focused in on the marshmallow, like trying with all of their might to not eat it. Some of the kids didn't care. They just didn't want to delay gratification. They ate that thing right away. Some of the little kids delayed gratification. And sure enough, the researcher came back, gave them 2 marshmallows. That's the funny part. But the interesting part is years later, those researchers followed up with those kids, and those kids that were actually were able to delay gratification were better off financially, had better relationships, were more successful in their school journey. All of these different markers of success. Obviously one of the reasons for that being this ability to delay gratification. So check it out on YouTube. It's a funny little video.
Hey, Dustin,
yeah.
Just if I can jump in, I really just want to say how big of a point that is, especially in the industry that we're in. Like when we're as real estate investors, like this is such a long-term play. It's such a long-term game for the most part. I mean, there are active ways to invest, but when you're in the buy and hold real estate world, like the gratification takes years and years and years to develop. Like you're waiting on principal pay down. If you're in Alberta, you're waiting a very long time for some appreciation on your real estate as well.
Yep.
But I think it's a great point, because when you get into this, there's so much hype around it. There's so much, I don't know what the right terminology is right now, but on social media, it looks so glamorous. I think glamorous is the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
But really the reality is it's a lot of paperwork. It's a lot of dealing with issues and jumping over hurdles, and you're not really generating a mass amount of wealth until you get years and years down the road. So I really want to make that point, that is super important for what we're doing as real estate investors.
Yeah. So beautifully said, man. I mean, it's that the idea that it's a marathon, not a sprint, right? And just being mindful of cultivating, because these are really characteristics that are not going to not only improve mental health, but just improve your overall success. And I'm glad that you made that point, because grit ties so beautifully into resilience. And I think resilience is such an important part of the work that all of you are hoping to do here as investors, right? It's that quality that's going to allow somebody who's knocked down to come back stronger than ever, right? It's this idea of bouncing back. So if a deal does not go through, like how quickly can you pick yourself up and go find the next deal? If something doesn't turn out the way that you want, how quickly can you just dust yourself off and not necessarily brush off what's happened, but just use some coping strategies, use some skills to be able to pick yourself up and get back on it. And that's why grit combined with resilience are such powerful tools. And resilience, right? It protects us against experiences that could be overwhelming, both in your business and in your personal life. And when it comes to cultivating it, right, it comes down to this idea of, embracing discomfort. What I said earlier is all challenges are truly opportunities. And I think the more that we can we can lean into that discomfort, the better equipped we're going to be able to be able to deal with things when things don't go the way that we want. And developing those coping strategies, those problem-solving skills. So when you do find yourself down and out, knocked down, you can reach to your toolbox and pull out those skills and those strategies to be able to help you there. And to learning to emotionally regulate yourself. And that's just like a fancy counseling or therapy term for just being able to calm yourself down. And we're going to talk about some of those strategies here in a second with self-care, things like meditation, grounding yourself, breathing exercises, those types of things. And on that note, let's shift gears. We're kind of coming into the final section here, talking about self-care and really the importance of it, and it truly being one of the most powerful tools in your toolbox. This idea of just taking care of yourself, really, that's what it means. And, you know, for the longest time, I thought self-care meant that I needed to be at the spa all day. I needed to be just chilling out, you know, just sometimes you do just need a spa day, but that's not just what self-care is. It can certainly be part of it, but there are so many other things that self-care can be about. And more importantly, the more personalized it is for you and what you need, the better. So what the heck is it? What do I mean when we're talking about it? Well, simply stated, you know, self-care just means taking care of yourself so you can be healthy, you can be well, you can do your job, and you can really help and care for others, and you can do all the things that you need to do. This includes your personal life, your business life. Really, it encompasses all of it. And as entrepreneurs, self-care is not a luxury, it is a necessity. And I'm saying that out loud because I'm having to remind myself of that a lot of the times, because just like every single one of you in this room, I'm a driven individual, and oftentimes self-care just moves down that to-do list. And in the past, certainly I thought of it as a luxury, but it is a necessity, because without it, you're not going to have the juice, you're not going to have the energy to move forward. So why is it important? For so many reasons. Self-care, it's going to build your capacity, your ability to be able to deal with the stressors of life and business. Because as we know, they're coming at us a million miles a minute. And the more that we prioritize ourselves, focusing in on recharging those batteries, the more resilient, quite honestly, we're going to be able to deal with the stressors of our life and our business. It's going to give your body and mind an opportunity to heal and recharge. If you're constantly working at 100% capacity, not only is this going to make it hard to focus, you'll have lack of clarity, it's actually doing damage physically, because stress hormones, adrenaline, if that is constantly pumping through our bodies, it's really going to wear us down physically, and it's going to lessen our life, essentially, you know, just in very simple and bold terms. Like I said, self-care is going to help you build resilience. It's also going to help you increase your sense of self-worth, because taking care of ourselves feels good. And I'm going to admit this out loud. I haven't told anybody this yet, but on Saturday night, for the first time in my life, I went and got a facial. Okay, I said that out loud. I'm comfortable. I know this is being recorded and it's on Facebook, but on Saturday night, for the first time in my life, I went to get a facial. If you had asked me 5 years ago, dude, do you want to get a facial? My response would have been, dudes don't get facials. But I decided to go do it. You know, I decided to treat myself, and it was worth it, because I'm sitting there for an hour and a half. I can't be on my phone. I can't do any work. The woman who was doing it was incredible. I asked her about 4,000 questions. Well, what is this? Why are you putting this on? Why are you doing that? And it was just this experience of self-care where I really just got to relax in the moment. So thank you for allowing me to share my truth with you here tonight. And like I said, self-care doesn't always need to be those luxurious things, but every now and again, it feels good to treat yourself. And it really helps you increase self-awareness as well. So think of self-care like this, right? It's allowing you to recharge your battery. There's no way that you're not gonna plug your phone in every night. And it's the same thing when it comes to self-care, right? Things like sleeping and eating, showering, right? These are self-care as well. So we are constantly recharging that battery, but taking those conscious moments out to really, really focus on taking some time That's what's going to give you that big boost. And this slide here, I'm going to leave it up for a couple of seconds just for you to maybe write down what on here maybe resonates with you. And I'd love, even just throw it in the chat right now. If there's anything on this screen that, or on this slide that resonates with you from a self-care standpoint, please just throw it in the chat. And if there's something that's not on here that you want to focus in on from a self-care standpoint, throw that into the chat as well. Celebrate the small wins more. Love it. Travel in nature. I absolutely love it. Now we're going to be able to do much more of that now that lockdown is we're coming out of lockdown. So yeah, limit social media, read and travel. I love it. I love it. I love it. Yeah, keep them coming. And eat better. Yes, yes. Definitely that is something that I need to focus. Sleep definitely counts. Sleep definitely counts. So just taking a look at this list, seeing what resonates with you, coming up with a bit of a self-care plan. And like I said earlier, just focusing in on those baby steps, taking your time, integrating these things into your life slowly is really gonna make the biggest impact. So we've got about another 5 minutes left. You guys are doing great. Let's move on to the final couple of slides here. So like I said, I wanted to share these 5 pillars of entrepreneurial mental health. And if you forget everything that I've said here tonight, that's okay. Zoom overload is definitely a thing. But if you forget everything I said tonight, just try and remember these 5 pillars of entrepreneurial mental health. So first and foremost, prioritize your self-care and come up with a self-care plan. And if you want to get some bonus points, some brownie points, find an accountability buddy, find an accountability partner, somebody that can crack the whip on you and just say, hey, did you do this? Hey, Phil, did you get that facial yet? You know, whatever you've got to do just to make sure that we're doing this, because that's one of the beauties of beautiful things about a group like this is we're all kind of on that path of entrepreneurship together, and we've got to help each other along the way. So prioritizing your self-care, coming up with a plan, and like I said, bonus points, finding an accountability partner. And build your mental health power team. I know that you guys talk a lot about your power team from a real estate standpoint. Having your accountant, your property managers, your mortgage brokers, all of these people in your power team. And it's the same thing when it comes to your mental health, having that power team around you. So for example, for me, I've got close friends that I know that I can reach to at any point to talk about whatever I need to talk about. Obviously, my wife, my parents, they're on my power team, but my doctor, built a solid relationship with him. I've got coaches and counselors that are on my power team as well. And you can even include people on your power team that you don't see in person. So maybe there's an influencer, somebody on YouTube, you really get inspired by their content, or a writer or an author that you really get inspired by. They can be on your power team as well. So really build that mental health power team so you can be able to interact, or you can reach out in those times of need. The other pillar number 3 is seek professional support when needed. And it's important for me to say this again, because vulnerability is a strength, not a weakness. And I'll tell you this, for the longest time, I thought that reaching out for support, reaching out and talking about my feelings, my struggles, I thought that made me weak. But I came to realize the amount of courage that it actually took to share things openly, honestly, and vulnerably and authentically. And that is not a weakness. That is definitely a strength. So if you need to, please just seek support when needed. There's nothing wrong with that. And that's actually going to help you move forward much quicker. Also, as we've said, and Brad talked about that earlier, is focusing on the long-term growth of your business. And the reason that this is a pillar of your mental health is because if you're just focused on quick goals, quick achievement, trying to get stuff done, you're going to be in this rushing energy where you're constantly rushing to the next thing. And not only is that going to be overwhelming for you just on a day-to-day basis, it's really going to start impacting your mental health, because you're not, as cliche as it is, stopping and smelling the roses. So building in that patience, having that long-term vision for your business is really going to do wonders, not only for your business, but for your mental health as well. And then the final pillar is, it's so important to not just prioritize your mental health, but prioritize your physical health. Because if you do not have your physical health, A, your mental health is going to suffer drastically, and B, you're not going to have the energy to be able to put in the work that you need to put in on your business. So for me, this is like the top 5 when it comes to as entrepreneurs and our mental health. And kind of as a bonus to all of this is just take baby steps. To me, it is all about taking those small baby steps. You don't go out first and try and do 20 real estate deals. You start with 1, and then maybe you do 2, and then before you know it, a few years later, you're up to doing higher volumes. And it's the same thing when it comes to your mental health and your mental wellness, is just take those baby steps. So I said I wanted to share a couple of resources with you here. First and foremost is the Canadian Suicide Prevention Line. It is 24/7. It is 365 days a year. It is an incredibly powerful resource. So if you or anybody that you know is in crisis of any sort, please, please, please don't hesitate to reach out, because there are trained professionals on the other end that are there to support you. They are compassionate. They are empathetic. They are understanding. And even just to self-disclose a little bit here, is in the past, when I've been in a crisis situation, I have called and reached out, and it has been incredible, the support that I've received. So it is there for us as Canadians, and it is an incredible, incredible resource. Also, crisisservicescanada.ca also includes this number. There's a text service which they have access to on there, and a couple of other incredible resources. CMHA, which is the Canadian Mental Health Association. Other great educational pieces there, great resources to be able to reach out to. They've got events. And then check me out on Instagram, please. I am the Authentic Man. I share a lot of positive, inspirational content on mental health, mental wellness, and just kind of improving your life. And also, like I said, if any of you are interested in, getting some further support, want to talk to me about the things that I offer, if you head to my website, dustinhogan.com, you can actually sign up there for a complimentary 15-minute discovery call. Happy to chat about anything mental health, mental wellness, entrepreneurship. Obviously, I'm so passionate about that. And then I always like to finish my presentations with a quote, and this is my favorite, by Theodore Roosevelt. And he says, "Far and away, the best prize life has to offer is the chance to work hard at work worth doing." And to me, as entrepreneurs, it is hard work that we are doing, but man, is it worth it when it pays off. And I just want to thank everybody. Thank Brad and Phil for having me out here tonight. Thank Amanda for her incredible presentation as well. And I just feel so honored to be able to share this. I hope you guys felt my passion, my energy, and my excitement for this, and certainly can answer any questions that may be lingering. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, Dustin. That was awesome.